Welcome back to the Grappling Bulletin podcast. I'm your host, Corey Stockton, here as always with Connor Joshin.
What's up, guys? How you doing?
Man, have an awesome weekend. Lots of jiu-jitsu. Got to do some training. Got to practice some of those techniques I've been seeing flying around at the Krikorian Open, the LA Open, all over the place. More jiu-jitsu still to come. I'm so excited for Pans, man. The roster looks stacked top to bottom. We're going to get into all of that as well as some of the huge events that happened this weekend. This weekend was loaded with jiu-jitsu, right? I mean, we had Polaris, we had Sogi, we had the LA Open, the Curitiba Open, AJP London. So much happening in the jiu-jitsu world. All these athletes really getting ready for really just staying active, right? Which is what we love to see.
Yeah, absolutely. And it wasn't just a lot of events. Some of the really big-name athletes were on there. I know one of the ones that I'm excited to get into, like Elizabeth Clay, Fiona Davies, Amy Campo, all these really big names. So, it's not just we got jiu-jitsu a lot, right? FloGrappling, this is the home for where you need to be if you're going to watch grappling events. But not only that, we got the stars in the house. So super fun. Corey, you said you're working on some moves. You got some good practice in over the weekend. Anything in particular that you're trying to work into your game?
I'm for the last month since we've been back from London, I've been diving so hard into the Gracie stuff.
Almost happened again, guys.
And just the simple positioning, the stuff that maybe wasn't very explicit in the techniques that he was showing, but was very implicit in the techniques that he was just hammering me with.
Yeah.
To try and adopt that closed guard, slow pressure passing style. Not the easiest thing in the world to practice. Takes a lot of deliberate focus, but that's why we drill. That's why we have mats at home in the garage, working on off hours.
Yeah, absolutely. He also said that he's working out. So next thing you know, in next week, 2 weeks from now, if Corey comes back here, just swole as hell, that's what's happening. He's working out. He's going to be bigger than everyone else in the office. He's already shoulder checking me as he passes in the hallway, just bullying everyone. So stay tuned for swole Corey, right?
That's enough of that. Let's get into some of the news from the week. Huge news on Sunday morning that the reigning IBJJF Absolute World Champion Nicholas Meregali has officially signed up for Pans. Meregali is very vocal about this. He only really competes in major tournaments, which is great, especially given his victory rate, his submission rate. We'll get into that. But Meregali being back at Pans for his first time since 2017 when he was a rookie black belt in 2017. What'd you make of this news?
Man, it's really exciting to me. I'm always excited to see Meregali back on the IBJJF circuit. It's kind of hard for me to watch some of these majors whenever you don't have like one of those big name athletes that runs a division, runs the absolute. He is kind of the guy with the target on his back, and he doesn't end up at, maybe a Pans, which is normal. Not everyone competes at every one of these majors, but when he is there, it feels like the storylines mean something just a little bit more. It kind of feels pertinent to the world championship discussion over who's going to be the most dominant in 2023. Seeing him out there is going to be out in California, I believe. Can't wait, man.
Yeah, one of the things that makes Meregali so exciting is, of course, his submission rate and his desire to win in the most, beautiful way, right? In the true methodology that we like to see in jiu-jitsu. That's why he's so fan-friendly. That's why people flock in droves to watch him compete. Whether you love him or hate him, you have to understand that Meregali is out there and he's going to put it all on line. He's going to try and win via submission or via ridiculously high score, nothing short of dominance. What we're looking at now is his run from Brasileiros last year, 2022, when he submitted every single one of his opponents to win the title.
Yeah, he had a lot to say about his submission rate, even on social media, which is one of the things that I love because IBJJF athletes, lots of them, they are excited to compete. They are, excited to interact with the fans, but not many people do so leading up to the events like Meregali does. He's always down for either a call out or just, putting his stamp on, I am the biggest, baddest in the division, in the tournament, and he's already been doing that over this weekend.
Yeah, he has looked great in his entire IBJJF career from top to bottom, and we talked about it in the Grappling Bulletin article. If you want more context, more details on Meregali's incredible career, go read that article. It is live on FloGrappling now. But something that stood out to me is just I was surprised to see how much of Meregali's 58 or 57-8 career record has been at his single pans, at the multiple world championships he's competed at Brasileiros, all of the major tournaments, and very few others. He's not one to enter the opens and kind of get his feet wet and test around and play around a little bit. Meregali enters the opens and he enters the absolute division and several different weight categories, honestly, at Pans, at Brasileiros, at Worlds.
Just these majors.
He just throws everything out there every time against some of the best in the world. He's beaten so many world champions in his, I believe it's now a 3-time world champion run.
Yeah.
It just always looks unstoppable just like this.
Absolutely. And it's not against just any competition. What we just saw there was Felipe Andrew. And Felipe Andrew is one of the most dominant guys on the IBJJF scene. Not only that, but this is a really stark contrast between the two athletes, between one athlete who maybe only does the majors and an athlete that's out there competing at lots of the opens. Felipe Andrew may just show up and surprise you at, like an Austin Open or something like that. So really cool to see, he's still competing with the guys and not just competing with them, but dominating the guys that are staying as active as possible. It's kind of surprising to see a guy able to maintain that level of dominance despite maybe not always putting himself in the waters all the time in the competition scene for these opens as often. Like you said, he's doing that. He's also doing only who's number ones and only ADCC. So even in the no-gi side, it's not like he's doing these very small competitions. He's only tackling the biggest and the best tournaments. Super fun to have him back. Also, like I had said, having a guy like Nicholas Meregali in these tournaments where we're all looking to see what's going to happen at Worlds whenever we're looking at the IBJJF season, who's going to be the next world champion, and having a name like Meregali in at Pans allows us to kind of play with that storyline a little bit going into the tournament. But not only do we get to play with the storyline of a world championship, but we do get to see him go out there and try and just take everyone's head off, man.
Yeah, and absolutely. He's proven that he can do that he wants to do that. I want to take kind of a high perspective view on Meregali's accolades since 2017 when he started his black belt career. 2017, like I mentioned, was the first and only time he competed at Pans. I think he came home with a silver medal at Pans, and since then just not only has he done well in most absolute divisions, but he has competed across the spectrum of heavyweight categories. He started competing at heavyweight last year when he won the absolute division. He also competed at super. At Pans this year, he's going to be at ultra heavyweight. We know every time Meregali steps on the mat, he's also looking to accomplish an absolute title, right? So he's coming in at the ultra heavyweight division. He'll be primed, I'm sure, to conquer the absolute as well. But if we can just pull up his record here, I want to take a look at some of the accolades, including his rookie year black belt title. We're going to move down the line here. 2018 Brasileiros absolute title. He won every one of those matches via submission. In 2019, he came back to Brasileiros and took double gold, again 78% submission rate. 2019 super heavyweight world champion, 75% submission rate. 2022 Brasileiros super heavyweight champion, all wins via submission. In 2022, he came back to Worlds after that 2021 kind of mix up where he got double DQ'd after hitting the final in both the weight and absolute championship. He came back to take gold in the absolute in 2022, also taking silver in the weight division. He had 75% submission rate in the absolute and 100% submission rate up until his loss in 2022 at super heavy. In his black belt career, he is 57-8. With a 74% submission rate. Now, Nicholas Meregali, as you mentioned, was right in on this post to remind us that even though it's a 74% submission rate, 92% submission rate in 2022. So, of course, he's climbing. He says that he's trying to kind of correct some of those stats, and what he said was an embarrassing 74% submission rate. Not to mention, Meregali has never been submitted as a black belt. In gi, no gi, in any of the major tournaments, any of the big styles, he has not been submitted anywhere at black belt.
And I love that mentality. That is definitely shades of Gordon Ryan, kind of looking at what otherwise would seem as a super successful submission rate and going, that's nothing. That's so sad. I'll make it better. And he even said the same thing about his 2022 submission rate. I just looked at his story recently, and he said, 90% submission rate, 92% submission rate in 2022. I'll do better, guys. I'm sorry. So, I love that, and I think that makes the fit over at Renzo Gracie under Donaher and with Gordon even a better fit. Now, I am really interested because, John Donaher, obviously, he is, one of the most decorated sports in the world, or decorated coaches in the sport. But he doesn't, necessarily have a huge stable of gi-specific athletes or a huge stable of gi accolades. But, one of the things Meregali has been super complimentary of is Donaher's gi game. Isn't that right?
Yeah, and John Donaher, of course, a longtime gi coach. We've seen more, you're right, of his accolades as a coach in the no-gi realm with, guys like Gordon Ryan, Gary Tonin, Giancarlo Bodoni. The list goes on. But, of course, John Donaher has released several very well put together instructionals in the gi. He's not just a student of no-gi grappling. He's a student of martial arts.
Yep.
And I think that comes first and foremost through in his teaching. But great to see that operate at the highest level on a stage like last year's World Championships, where John was in Nicholas's corner, or I'm sure this year's Pan Championships, John will probably be in Nicholas's corner again. Watching the coach-athlete relationship between John and Nicholas in the gi and in no gi is a really interesting dynamic, because Meregali, by most standards, has come to John Donaher as a finished product. But, of course, John is looking to help Meregali continue to elevate, and I think doing a phenomenal job.
Absolutely.
Nicholas Meregali, not the only world champion registered for Pans for Pans this year, rather. There are in total 17 world champions registered for Pans, from the men's roosterweight to the men's ultra heavy, the women's roosterweight to the women's super heavy. It is a stacked event. I want to get into some of those names and then take a look at some of the divisions that these high level athletes live in for this tournament in Florida, which kicks off, by the way, March 21st through 26th. The black belts take the mat the 25th. Those who have to qualify to compete in the final rounds, the final rounds start on the 26th on Sunday.
Yeah, absolutely. And if you're curious how you can follow along, not only are you going to be able to watch all the matches on Flo, but also we'll have live updates articles. There'll be live previews on YouTube and Facebook whenever we can. So make sure, everyone's got work. This is a long tournament. You may not be able to tune in all the time, but stay tuned to all the different ways that you can catch up, whether that's on the Instagram or that's following along with Corey, right?
Yeah, absolutely. We're going to be live on the ground, following all of your favorite athletes, making sure you know what to look for, what to watch for, so that you are tuned into the most important news, the most exciting matches, the most surprising results of the event. Let's kick it into some of these divisions, or some of these champions, starting with the roosterweight, the world champion, Taliesin Suarez, coming back to roosterweight, fresh off of a phenomenal performance at Euros. His new teammate, Diego Oliveira, who they've been very close friends for a long time, but now they are again flying the same flag. The AOJ banner will be in at light featherweight, as will Pato's former teammate from Dream Art, Mayhem Alves, down to light feather after spending a couple of months toying around with feather, with lightweight, but he is a light featherweight world champion. He will be returning to light featherweight for this event. At featherweight, the Hokage, Fabricio Andre, coming in a really deep, really stacked division, but Fabricio, I think, the only world champion, will be the top seed and the favorite to win, especially following his gold medal performance at Euros. Shane Mill Taylor, up to lightweight. He won his world title in 2018 at featherweight. Now moving up to lightweight, where I think he has a really interesting shot. He's kind of not as much a veteran as some of the veterans in that division, but he is not as much a newcomer as many of the newcomers in that division. So really playing the middle of the pack. Connor, who else we got?
Tynan Dalpra. He has made his stamp on the middleweight division. He is obviously the world champion, and he's returning. He's going to try and make this IBJJF season another run at a world champion. He's doing it again here at Pans. Super fun to see. We had talked about previously maybe people potentially clearing out of that division, and Tynan's going to have to make another run for it. So super exciting. On top of that, we have Gustavo Batista. He is one of the most pressure-heavy athletes you can see. Always hard to see, one of your favorite athletes, have him maybe early in the rounds, because he can put a stop to just about anyone. Not only that, we got Felipe Andrew, who is not only a world champion, but one of the most active competitors on earth. Eric Muniz, and then Nicholas Meregali. Eric Muniz, obviously part of the Muniz brothers, one of, I think 2021 and 2022's kind of one of those breakout stars that really put their name on the map. And then Nicholas Meregali is Nicholas Meregali.
Absolutely. Real quick, I want to run down the women's world champions that are also coming to Pans. Maisa Bastos, who won the Grand Slam last year. Mm-hmm. Let's not forget Maisa Bastos, one of the best in the business, right? She won Worlds, Pans, Brasileiros, and Europeans last year. She won Europeans earlier this year. Mm-hmm. So she's looking to keep that medal streak alive, as is Ana Rodriguez, who I believe won everything except for Europeans last year. At light featherweight, Maisa was at Rooster. At light featherweight, ARod bumping up now to featherweight, where she wants to challenge herself a little bit more, going up against the bigger opponents. There she might face, and I want to dive into this a little bit later, but Fiona Davis, the lightweight world champion, who has bumped down to featherweight. So that one really interests me. I want to preview the rest of that bracket a little bit later on. Luisa Montero, the multiple-time world champion in lightweight. Melissa Quetzo, the heavyweight world champion, down to medium heavy. Larissa Diaz, last year's heavyweight world champion, also at heavy. And then, of course, Gabby Pisagna, who, I don't want to get this wrong, I think has won the last 13 major titles in a row, including the Absolute. Yeah. But Gabby Pisagna, double Grand Slam last year. I think she came close to a double Grand Slam the year before that. Looking to the double Grand Slam again this year. Already gotten the ball rolling at Euros, where she took double gold. And Pans is the next step here. She's already registered for Brasileiros. I'm sure the moment Worlds opens up, she'll be registered for Worlds as well. But Gabby Pisagna just looking to add to that mountain of IBJJF major gold medals. So like we said, stacked roster here at Pans at the end of this month. The black belts are really, this is one of my favorite black belt rosters in the last couple of majors, I think since Worlds 2022. This is as deep a roster for a World Championships as you would see at a World Championships.
And correct me if I'm wrong, I believe the registration's at what, like 90% plus
Registration
capacity?
Officially closed this morning.
Whew, man. So not only are we getting a stacked bracket of just, highly decorated athletes, but they're going to be filled out with, black belts that are also looking to snipe a name off of the scoreboard and, put theirs in its place. So if you're looking for fun storylines, if you're looking for good jiu-jitsu that may, help tell the story of 2023 for the sport, this may be a great place to start.
Yeah. So we just took a look at who are what I would imagine are the favorites in most of those divisions, right? They'll be the number one seeds coming in as world champions, or those who are splitting a division will most likely be the 1 and 2 seeds. With that being said, I want to get into what's your favorite division, or maybe your favorite 2 or 3 divisions coming to Pans.
Man, there's a lot of good ones, right? So first off, I think I'm going to let you handle light feather, right? Because you've been a fan of light feather, but I do just want to call out that we got Diogo Hayes coming in at light feather. Now, obviously, he's in that same weight class with 2 world champions, Meram and Diego Pato, but he's not in there with Fabricio. Fabricio is up a weight class this time, so if Diogo is able to capture enough victories to make his way through to the World Championship stage, he doesn't have to close out, which is nice to see. Additionally, I'm a big fan of the medium heavyweight division. In the medium heavyweight division, we have Ronaldo Jr., Elder Cruz, Gustavo Batista, who I mentioned earlier, Jansen Gomez, Wanderson Ferreira, who is 2023 brown belt double gold at Euros. Francisco Lowe, who I know you've been really big on. Sebastian Rodriguez, just an absolutely jam-packed bracket. So, medium heavy has got to be one that you have on your radar if you're a fan. On top of that, we got some real good stuff going on, just a weight class away over at the heavyweight. You have your Felipe Andrews, obviously. Felipe Andrews going to be at all of these majors. You have Adam Wardzinski and Patrick Gaggio and Devontae Johnson, Andre Porfirio. On top of that, we have Roberto Jimenez, which kind of stood out to me. Roberto, in 2022, 2023, we've seen him kind of move around quite a few weight classes. At 2022 Worlds, he was at 88 kgs, which is about 195 pounds. At 2022 ADCC, he was at 77 kgs, which is about 170 pounds. And now he's moved up to 94 kg, which is 208 about. So he has a lot of room to flex his weight, which is cool. I'm curious how he's going to come in, if he's going to be a smaller guy in the weight class, though, because of kind of how he flexes up and down from here. But I don't know. What about you? What are you excited for?
Yeah, I just want to kind of add to that quickly. Roberto's historically a weight bender, right? He goes from
the weight bender's so good.
He goes from like 77 kilos all the way up to, I've seen him compete at 99 kilos basically. So all over the place. He loves to enter the absolute division. So seeing Roberto come in at heavy, I think is a good sign of what he plans to do to start the weekend, right? With the absolute division. Yeah. So there's a good sign that we could see Roberto at absolute, and just based on the way he's built, based on his style, based on the fact that he might, be entering heavy, but kind of closer to lightweight or middleweight, you can expect just some wild thrown out of nowhere. We brought this up at the maybe one of the first podcasts of the year, but if you have any doubt as to what Roberto looks like in the gi of late, go back and watch his match with Jansen Gomez from the London Open. Just a firefight. Now, Jansen's one to have that match with, right? Those two guys are just going to kind of unload on each other. But Roberto, even though maybe more recently known for his no-gi pedigree, has one of the most exciting and entertaining and open gi games of anybody in any division.
Absolutely.
As you mentioned, I do want to jump to light featherweight division. It is stacked. You mentioned the two world champions, Mayra Malvez and Diego Batista Pato. Two of the favorite, let's call them the favorites in the division, right? The reigning and the former world champion. But of course, Diogo Hayes, the baby shark, who surprisingly has not won a black belt major IBJJF world title in his career. Surprising because, of course, ADCC world champion, AJP world champion. He looked great at the Curitiba Open. We'll talk about that a little bit more. But he won that title. I think right now is the era of Diogo Hayes. I think Diogo is at the peak of his game. So even though Mayram and Pato will be his biggest tests, I think Diogo is in the best form he can possibly be since the last time he saw these guys. Now, that's not to say that he is a lock to beat them. I think those are two of the toughest tests in this division, but not the only test in this division. There's also Malachi Edmond, who just recently beat Pato in the European finals, right? So Malachi, another test there. This division's loaded. I mean, we can call out a ton of names. Zach Kina also going to be a test here. He's a rookie, a little bit of a wild card. But the list goes on. I also want to shout out Mario Alvarado, who is also a rookie black belt. Took gold at Pans last year as a brown belt. So there are a couple wild cards, the two world champions, and then the baby shark, who I think is really going to bring some attention. Speaking of featherweight divisions, I know we just talked about light featherweight here, but we talked a little bit about the women's featherweight division. I want to bump up there and talk about one particular matchup, but a couple of other interesting athletes that can shake things up there. How cool would it be to see ARod versus Fiona?
Ooh, man, that's not something I would have guessed. That's not on my bingo card, I guess I should say, for most of these majors.
Fiona won the world at lightweight in 2022. ARod won light feather in 2022. They're going to meet in the middle at featherweight. So ARod bumping up, Fiona cutting down. I love this matchup. ARod, of course, mostly a passer. You can say the same for Fiona, mostly a passer. She's got, I'd say a little bit better takedowns. ARod, when she is playing off her back, a little bit better known for her guard. But really, anything could happen in this match. Something that you don't think of very often when you think of great gi matchups is, but I think this one for sure jumps out as a potential for match of the year. Really interesting, really compelling match. I think a lot to be gleaned about both of these athletes' games as far as what goes down in this matchup. I have no way of predicting how this goes.
Yeah, and Fiona is one of those athletes when she's at the top of her game, she's on the top of the world, and then sometimes that's not the case. So, even predicting how that match goes, if you had it perfectly figured out matchup style-wise, it really just depends on, how do you show up the day of? That's going to be something I'm definitely watching for.
Also want to call out the women's lightweight division because, for me, this division, pretty wide open. Margot Ciccarelli, Emily Fernandez, Larissa Martins, Janina Libre, and Maria Claudia. Now, I think of those names, Janina is the most well-recognized after her back-to-back performances at the FloGrappling IBJJF GPs. Oh, excuse me, Luisa Montero. How did I miss that name? Luisa Montero in the mix as well, the most decorated of the bunch. But don't sleep on people like Maria Claudia. Maria Claudia won Worlds at brown belt last year, teammate of Gabriele Bisagna. Really, really tough game, really durable guard. I think this division for sure going to be maybe a lot of question marks. As a betting man, I could imagine Luisa versus Janina in the final, which would be a rematch from the first GP in October, where Janina won on her way to the title. But Luisa, you can't bet against her on any day. She's had matchups in just about every division you can imagine, and she's won almost all of them.
Yeah, and I think what'll be really interesting about that is because of Janina's success at the Grand Prix, everyone's kind of looking at her as a favorite. But I think the formats are going to be different enough, to put some question marks there. Of does Janina, is she able to replicate that same kind of success when maybe she'll have more matches? When maybe this is going to be spread out over a day or two rather than just getting it over in a 2-hour kind of period. And when you're talking about competitions, it's not so much just what happens on the mat, but also the prep time and, kind of the headspace you're in and where you're at and how you're competing. So I think that's a major enough change that even under the same rule set, this Luisa Montero match could go dramatically different than the last time. We just don't really know.
Yeah, just all of the divisions. I mean, we could go through every single one of these fans' divisions at length. I'm sure we will be doing that in written content, in articles in the next couple of days, because there's just so many compelling, interesting stories between the athletes, the athlete rivalries, the whole divisions, the teams. So much makes up PANS besides just this tournament, right? Besides just the matches. All of these athletes have really incredible stories. We'll be following them and kind of sharing them for the next couple of weeks until the black belts take the mat at PANS. Of course, I wanted to shout out Cole Abate also making not his brown belt debut, but his brown belt major debut after winning Euros. So tune in for Cole Abate. I imagine he'll be taking the mat either Thursday or Friday, the 23rd or 24th. So stay tuned for all of that. We will keep you covered. In the meantime, I think we should get into some of the news from last week.
Which there was a lot of news
last week. Let's start with what I think is the biggest piece of news
we have to cover.
We knew coming out of Nogi World last year that something would happen, right?
Yeah.
Because there was that weird circumstance where 2 of the podiums had no first place, no second place, right? Yeah. The absolute division, first and second place were abdicated. No final took place. In the heavyweight division, first and second place, no athlete competed in the final. So there were 2 bronze medalists in the absolute division, 2 bronze medalists in the heavyweight division, and nothing else there.
Yeah, which is a unique thing to jiu-jitsu. I don't know if there's any other sport in the world where you can have a mystery podium at the end of an event, and there's really nothing to be learned or garnered from it until months later. But when we do, it does kind of explode into the news that we found out recently.
And so now we know what came of that, right? 5 athletes have been suspended for doping violations by USADA. All 5 athletes who received their suspensions are taking 3-year suspensions as a result of testing on or after Nogi Worlds. Now, it was not all 4 of the athletes who did not attend the finals, nor was it just those athletes who did not attend the finals. Let's start with Roberto Cyborg. Cyborg skipped the absolute division after winning the ultra heavyweight division. He tested positive for PEDs, for illegal substances, will be suspended for 3 years. Now, Cyborg, 42 years old at the time of the competition, on his way to 43. So a 3-year ban puts him at 45, 46 by the time he returns.
Yeah, and if he returns, if he does return, you're going to have the question, like, what kind of shape are you in? Are you going to be doing masters, or are you going right back into the adult division? But this is probably the biggest name on the list of just, like, as far as, being most recognizable. But, man, it's unfortunate to see, I guess you say.
Yeah, most decorated for sure of the names. Cyborg also very vocal about his interpretation of the presence of USADA there right now. IBJJF is a signatory of USADA. They are in a contract with USADA, and USADA has not just the right but the duty to test at Worlds and at Nogi Worlds, and IBJJF has not just a right but a responsibility to enforce the sanctions levied by USADA. So, as critical as he may be, those are the rules. Every athlete signs a contract to compete. That's the way it is. I don't want to elaborate too much on that or go too deep into that. However, Cyborg, of course, not the only athlete who received suspension. Enriques Guillotine, who was supposed to be his opponent in the absolute final. Ciccone won the super heavyweight division. Since been stripped of that. Actually, they haven't officially stripped anybody yet. On the results page, I'm sure those notifications have already been sent out.
But that is standard operating procedure.
Correct. And it's actually part of the fine as announced by USADA in their release is that these athletes have been stripped. Anyway, Ciccone has been stripped of the super heavyweight title. That was his first IBJJF major. His second IBJJF major title. He had also won Nogi Pans. But Ciccone, a younger athlete, also taking a 3-year suspension, but again, as we said, a major setback. For somebody like Cyborg, who is 42, 43, that puts you at 45, 46 on your return. But even an athlete like Ciccone, who I don't know his exact age, but he's in his 20s. A 3-year setback, 3 years is the difference between a generation of jiu-jitsu athletes.
Yeah, absolutely. And not only that, it comes down to how recognizable you are, right? In 3 years, these athletes are having to leverage their brands, not just for, fans and whatnot, but to get on these events and having something like this be a little bit of maybe a stain on the legacy is hard to see.
Let's jump on to the next one. Wagner Rocha. Skipped the heavyweight final where he was supposed to compete against Andre Porfirio. Porfirio also skipped. Wagner Rocha refused to submit a sample to USADA, but accepted the 3-year fine that comes with the 3-year penalty, the 3-year suspension that comes with that. So Wagner, in a similar boat as Cyborg, 40 or nearly 40 years old. So his return, he'll be around 43.
Yep.
It's a big setback for Wagner. It is what it is. Interesting to note, however, that Porfirio, who also skipped, was not fined. I don't know. There was no information in the release, nor will there be, as far as whether Porfirio was tested, whether he wasn't. But one way or the other, Porfirio is still eligible to compete and is actually registered to compete at PANS in the next week.
And also interesting to note, Porfirio has recently left Fight Sports, which are two of the major names of this in this kind of USADA release.
Don't want to speculate too much about that because I just don't know the details. But 2 more athletes that were suspended. Jonatas Gracie of Atos, who won the middleweight division. Gracie in a similar situation to Ciccone, right? He's a young athlete. He's in his earlier mid-20s, but a 3-year setback is a notable setback. This was Gracie's first world title, for his first major title. So to be stripped of that title and then to eat 3 years of inactivity on top of that is a big setback for athletes like this.
Yeah, absolutely. And I know there was some conversation online because Jonathan obviously was on the last Who's Number One. And anytime you have this kind of news break, you're going to have people casting doubt on any of your victories, right? And so, after such a performance on Who's Number One where you look very dominant, very strong, there was kind of some chirping back and forth about, maybe how much this kind of PED use may have affected that victory as well.
Last one here, Igor Feliz, the silver medalist in the lightweight division, was given a 3-year ban for testing that happened immediately after the event. Also, a young athlete, not a rookie black belt, but an early black belt, maybe 2 years into his black belt career, he won. I believe he was awarded his black belt at the end of 2020. So just a couple years into his black belt career, young athlete, I think he's 22, 23. And again, another one of these athletes who this early in your career, a 3-year setback is a big hurdle.
Yeah. And it's, this is just endemic of a larger question in jiu-jitsu around PED use. I don't think anyone has any solutions or answers necessarily. I did love to see the conversation kind of sprout up online. We saw Craig Jones give his 2 cents on it in his own YouTube video. It was great to see him dressed up as Dr. Jones, you know what I mean? But, yeah, a lot of speculation also about, the future athletes maybe catching some flack from a similar problem. So I think we all should probably just keep our eyes on the news for any more drops like this, or I think this could really affect the IBJJF landscape and which athletes we see competing under that banner.
For sure. I do want to call out though that this changes the results. It hasn't officially happened yet, but if we're following the precedent of the IBJJF, this is going to change what happens on at least 3 of those podiums, right? Victor Hugo will become the ultra heavyweight champion in 2022. Felipe Trovo will become the super heavyweight champion of 2022, and Sebastian Rodriguez will become the middleweight champion of 2022. So a couple of now multiple-time champions. Victor Hugo now a multiple-time world champion. Actually, it remains the case. He just adds another medal to his collection. Felipe Trovo, a first-time world champion, and Sebastian Rodriguez may become a first-time world champion here. Interesting to note that he would be the first ever world champion from Costa Rica.
Yeah.
Just a cool little factoid there.
There you go. It is unfortunate, though, because some of these athletes, if you're going to be looking at their records at any point, it feels like there's going to have to be an asterisk by some of these, world championships, because at least for the athletes, I know these competitors, that's not how you want your first world championship to be handed to you. Obviously, they fought their way through the bracket. They earned their spot in the finals, and if your opponent is not on a fair playing field, all hats off to you. You deserve the world championship more than anyone else. But that can't be a great feeling knowing that that asterisk kind of has to stay on your record. I was watching a Daniel Cormier interview recently, and he said something similar about his John Jones. He doesn't think that it would have changed the result of between him and John Jones if Jones maybe hadn't popped for PED use. However, that question mark, that asterisk, is something that he's going to kind of have to carry for a while.
Yeah, for sure. It's not a simple situation, right? It's very complex, not just for the athletes who were suspended, but for the athletes who step in place on the podium, right? It's not a simple, hey, you're a champion now. There's a little bit more complexity to it because you're right. There is that seed of doubt, or there are however many emotions. I don't want to put words or feelings into athletes' mouths and minds, but more news will come of that when we get the official results update. I'm hoping to hear from some of those athletes on exactly how they react to a situation like that. But in the meantime, let's move on to more light-spirited news, let's call it.
Let's do it.
Here's one that caught me very off guard. Gracie returning to the UFC after several years off. Tron's last match, I believe, was 2019?
Yeah, something like that. So
Tron will be back in the Octagon in May, on May 6th in Newark, New Jersey. It's going to be a really interesting test for Tron Gracie, who had been undefeated up until the last time he fought which was his first loss against Cub Swanson.
Yeah, I'm always a fan of seeing more jiu-jitsu specialists going out there and putting their hand in the MMA ring, not just in the MMA ring, but on the UFC stage. It's really good. We have Gracie, you got your Brian Ortegas, anyone that I can watch that's I know is going to be shooting for a way to put our martial art on the map on the largest stage possible. Always a fan. Glad Kron's getting back in there.
Kron's opponent is Charles Jourdain, who is 13-6-1. This will be a featherweight matchup. Kron, by the way, I mentioned he's 5-1. Hasn't fought since his last match, which was his first loss. In his first 5 victories, each of them came via submission. So, exactly who we want to be representing jiu-jitsu out there as a jiu-jitsu purist, right? As a lover of jiu-jitsu who wants to see jiu-jitsu well represented in the UFC, Tron Gracie is the type of athlete to kind of be that hero for us, right? Go out there, put submission wrestling, submission grappling on display in the way he knows how. Of course, the son of Rickson Gracie, who better to do it?
Yeah, it does. It does give me a little bit of concern whenever I see jiu-jitsu guys go out there, though, only because I know there almost seems to be like a chip on the shoulder sometimes. I think I saw it with Brian Ortega. He has a very stand and bang style when he just wanted to no, grab the guy, take him down, and end the fight so I don't have to see you get beat up. So hopefully Kron can go out there just like his first 5 wins, go out there and just get it done like you're seeing on the screen. Maybe we'll get a jumping, flying guillotine or something crazy like that.
And like I said, I was shocked to see him back because, Kron's entrance into the UFC was really well received. I think because of the story of, the Gracie family story, of course, is a legendary story, but Kron is so closely attached to it because he's Rickson's son, right? And so because of all of the energy, the hype surrounding exactly where he is in the family tree, and I think how good he was in competing at ADCC, competing in the IBJJF, he had this aura about him when he entered the UFC in 2019. And then, he went, I think, 1-1 on the UFC, and then kind of disappeared for a couple of years.
Yeah.
So to finally have him back feels like it came out of left field, but it was a really fortunate surprise.
Yeah. Super fun to see. Kron, you got the jiu-jitsu world at your back. Go out there and get it done, my brother.
That's it for the news of the week. But let's talk about some of the action that happened this weekend during a couple of phenomenal events. I want to start with one that happened right here on FloGrappling, talking about Sogi Winter Wars, which included a welterweight showdown for the number 1 contender spot, as well as a middleweight Grand Prix and a heavyweight title super fight. I want to kick it off with the middleweight Grand Prix, where Enrique Galarza looked absolutely phenomenal. Galarza, a longtime competitor out there on the East Coast, on the New York, New Jersey scene, went out and submitted all 3 of his opponents with 3 different submissions. Really looked just dominant. He ended up catching an armbar in his first match. And then here we've got this, I believe this is the match with the... this is the Estima lock. Watch that foot come over. Galarza, and this is the final here against Felipe Caesar of Unity. And Galarza just waiting for his opportunity, catches this Estima lock to seal the deal, wins the Sogi middleweight title. Just anytime somebody can go out into an EBI rules format and submit all 3 opponents in regulation, I've got so much appreciation for that because, there's submitting every opponent, right? But doing half of them or 3 of them in overtime. And then there's getting the job done before overtime is required. And there's just so much more to be said of that. I appreciate that so much more as a fan when I see it.
And it's not just getting it done in regulation, which is impressive to see, but because of the rule set, especially, if you're maybe the favorite or your opponent's a little bit more concerned with it, there is a little bit of an incentive for your opponent to maybe let it last till overtime, right? So not only is it impressive because you're getting it done in the time, but you're getting it done in regulation time period when your opponent is incentivized purely for defense oftentimes. So, I think it just adds another layer of difficulty. So hats off to Enrique.
I want to take one more look at an Enrique submission here from the semifinal against Nick Domigioni. Really nice mounted guillotine. Let's roll this. He sets it up off of this. I think, if I remember correctly, he used the darts to get to the attack position, then started just progressing into this really nice high elbow guillotine from the mount.
Have you seen much of Enrique before? Is this kind of one of his times of putting himself on the map here?
So Enrique was around a lot when I was competing on some of the smaller stages in the East Coast, but he was always, very toward the headline of all of those shows, always winning some of those local tournaments, things like that. But I would say, just off the top of my head, this is probably Enrique's biggest performance to date.
Love to see it. And like you said, coming over, looks like he's trying to, I got that anaconda transition. I got in trouble once for mixing up a darts and anaconda.
You're right.
Which I will absolutely blame Corey for.
We all learned something that day.
Luckily, we got to do it to all, 800,000 Instagram followers. But, man, really fun to see, Sogi and, all the events going down on
high
flow.
Elbow transition right to the mount.
Oh, man. Not even in there. Still working past that quarter guard with the oh, man, beautiful. Still having the foot trap. Doesn't stop him from getting that finish on the guillotine. Love to see it. What else do we have from Sogi?
Two more results I want to call out. I think we have one right here. Keith Krikorian jumped up what I'd imagine is a ton of weight. I don't know what Keith walks around at, but he competed at ADCC in the 66 kilogram division, 145. We've seen him compete at 145, 155. This was a 170-pound match for the number one contender spot against Andrew Solano, who was the reigning number one contender in Sogi. Keith his back take mechanics are incredible, and his relentlessness against a larger opponent in Andrew Solano. Keith did a great job of getting to the back. Forget the fact the chairs are here. The chairs will move for me. I'm securing this rear naked choke. Locks it up. No hooks in. Mm-hmm. But that was all she wrote. Keith now in the number one contender spot. He will take on, at 170 pounds, Kenta Iwamoto on their March 6th card at Shogi. So that, for me, is a great matchup. Australia and Asia trials winner in Kenta versus a multiple-time U.S. trials winner, East Coast, West Coast trials winner in Keith Krikorian. Really excited to see what that looks like. That's a couple of months away from now. Then one more I want to shout out. We don't have a clip for this, but the adult slayer, Pat Chigoli, came back, defended his title at Sogi against Alex Nemeth. Pat, normally a leg locker, really well known, maybe notorious for
is probably a pretty good
for his leg lock ability, his leg lock tenacity.
Yeah, I don't know. He's obviously very good at it, but I don't think it's him getting leg locks that really makes him, maybe notorious. Maybe how he takes the leg off of the rest of the body is probably more closely aligned.
But a shout out to him. He did not go back to the well for his win. So he went to overtime, but not before he showed off a lot of his great standing game, his wrestling. So really impressed to see that he's still developing, right? He's just 16 years old, but developing into a real threat. So more to come, hopefully, from the adult slayer soon. In the meantime, more to recap. Let's jump next to Polaris. Polaris, which was on UFC Fight Pass this weekend out in England. It was not in London. It was in Dortmund, I think. Let's start with Liz Clay.
Man, you got to love to see Liz Clay back on the scene in a big way. She came in huge in 2021 on the Fight to Win and Who's Number One scene, taking a bunch of big names. But then it seemed like her momentum had maybe slowed a little bit in 2022. She'd go to the ADCCs and the IBJJFs, and while she was making it towards the end of the brackets, it didn't really seem like she was able to secure the victories when maybe it mattered to get on the top spot on the podiums. But seeing her come out and do so well, she took out two huge names. One, Theon Davies. ADCC champion, got the submission with a toe hold. Not something I'd expect. On top of that, in the finals, then she goes on to beat another 2022 ADCC champion by points, Amy Campo. Now, if you know anything about Elizabeth Clay's game, this bottom game is so dangerous, but to win a points victory over someone like Amy Campo, who's so good at securing, the position and making sure that she's up on the scoreboard, that's super impressive here.
Yeah, and this is maybe a little bit of speculation, but also coming from interviews and conversations I've had with Elizabeth, that she was really well known for her leg locks. At the end of her brown belt career, at the beginning of her black belt career, she was labeled a leg locker, right? And while that is true that her leg locks are often some of her biggest threats, I think that people forgot maybe how good her wrestling is, how good her takedown game is, how good her back control, her guillotine, like how versatile her game is. And I think for one reason or another, she wasn't able to show that off. Now, whether she had tunnel vision in the leg lock game or whether her opponents were making leg locks accessible and then taking them away, doesn't matter. Ultimately, I think being stuck in that battle, in the leg battle, kind of hindered her. Now, she still won Nogi Pans and Nogi Worlds in 2021, still won Nogi Pans and Nogi Worlds in 2022, but especially in 2022, I think one thing we saw was that Liz got to show off a lot more of her non-leg lock game, right? At Nogi Pans, she put on a dominant display, sweep to pass to back control, rode the back, got the submission. She did the same at Nogi Worlds for almost all of her opponents until she met Amy Campo. And Amy Campo, by the way, up until Nogi Worlds last year, was 3-0 against Liz Clay. Liz Clay won that match in the final. She went on to beat her again at Polaris. Liz Clay is gaining some momentum, and I think, she took on this role of kind of breakthrough athlete or like rising star in 2020, 2021. And I think a lot of people said, okay, that's Liz Clay. She's the leg locker. She's that athlete who goes for submission. If it doesn't work out, she loses on points. That's it. But she's 22 years old. She is still developing, and she's proved here at Polaris that she is developing quickly and becoming more and more dangerous in more and more elements of her game. So her first match against Joanna Deneva. Joanna, by the way, huge credit to her, incredibly durable. I don't know if you saw all of that match, but Liz Clay tried every submission known to man in that match, and Joanna staved off almost all of them. Liz eventually caught a rear mount triangle arm lock, finished that one, but not before some wicked gogoplata, some wicked monoplata, just throwing the kitchen sink at Joanna. Eventually finished that. Turned that around, finished that toe hold on Fiona, which awesome submission against somebody who is so rarely submitted, so rarely in a bad position. A win over Fiona is a great feather in Elizabeth's cap. And then, of course, as we mentioned, that second win over her rival, Amy Campo. They've now met 5 times at black belt. Amy is 3-2, but they've met several times at color belt as well. So that rivalry is strong and just continually building. Oh, yeah.
And now Elizabeth Clay is $20,000 richer, which makes her 100 times richer than I am. Great to see it. I love to see these athletes getting paid. Yep. $20 in the bank account. So nice. Liz Clay, come up off it if you got some. But love to see it. Super exciting, and love to see her kicking back off momentum in full swing for the beginning of 2023.
Couple of honorable mentions for the results at Polaris. Go back if you are a subscriber to Fight Pass and watch the Brianna St. Marie versus Maggie Grandotti match. Brianna with some really cool Kimura skills. The setup was really nice. The way she isolated the shoulder. She nearly tore what looked like Maggie's arm straight off. Maggie defended it well, showed off her flexibility, showed off her craftiness, but eventually Brianna turned that into a gnarly armbar. Amy Campo had a couple great submissions of her own, including one over BSM. And I think one of the cooler matches of the night, Fiona versus Giovanna Jara. Giovanna competes at several weight categories heavier than Fiona, but Fiona just says, no, I'm an ADCC world champion. I'm a veteran here. You're still coming up. Not today. And put on a real I wouldn't call it a clinic, right? But it was definitely a statement made in the final couple of minutes of those matches. Couple of minutes of that match saying, no, I'm here. You're trying to be here. It's not going to happen today.
Love to see it. On top of that, Owen Livesey got a win over Chris Weidman, a former UFC champion and D1
fun match.
All-American wrestler. What'd you think about it?
They did exactly what I think all of us wanted to see, which was, okay, Owen is a decorated judoka. Chris is a decorated wrestler, UFC veteran.
So let's scrap.
They didn't bring it to the ground very much. They just kind of tried to throw each other around, and it was not one of those like takedown battles that you sometimes see where guys just pop each other on the shoulder,
like
pop each other on the head.
Yeah.
It looked like a wrestling match.
Good. Love to see that. Love to see athletes open up. No more anti-wrestling. So
we're running out of time here. I do want to get to a couple of results from around the world, starting with the LA Open. Several of the athletes that we talked about earlier in the show headed to PANS, ran out to LA, and tried to get their feet wet, trying to loosen up for PANS in LA, in Brazil, in London. So let's run through some of those names. I think we have some footage here from Ronaldo doing some work here. In the meantime, let's run through it. Ronaldo, of course, took gold in his division. Kevin Carrasco defeated Zach Kaina in the light featherweight division final. Diego Pato won the featherweight division. So many of the athletes from PANS are out in LA. You got a couple more?
Man, Janaina beats Amanda Bruce in the lightweight final. She's going to be returning for the lightweight division at PANS. Man, we got a lot of them. We got, let me see.
Shout out Pablo Lavicelli. Pablo, maybe an unsung hero from Argentina, now representing AOJ. Pablo headed toward the lightweight division at PANS, and I think maybe a little bit slept on. Now, him and Jonathan Alves, probably two of the favorites in that division. But yeah, don't lose sight of Pablo Lavicelli.
Yeah, absolutely.
I want to jump over to the Curitiba Open, where several of the best from Brazil went to also to loosen up a little bit for PANS. Starting with, of course, the Baby Shark. Baby Shark looked great, took gold in the featherweight division down there, as well as in Nogi the following day. Eric Muniz also won. Patrick Gaudio won. Talita Lima, Jessica Dantas. Pedro Alex, who is not registered for PANS, took double gold. Mauricio Oliveira. Huge showing from some of the Brazilian standouts.
That's such a huge group of names.
Yeah.
Jesus, man.
Yeah. And then last but not least, the AJP London Pro, the London Grand Slam. Several of the rest of the best athletes from Brazil headed out to London to collect, of course, Mika Galvão. Maybe this shouldn't surprise anybody. Mika had 4 matches. How many submissions did Mika have?
I'm going to guess 4.
It was 4, and the final was a 33-second match where he scored a takedown, a pass, and a back control submission in 33 seconds. You got other results here from London Pro?
Yeah, man. Not only was it, Mika going out there shooting for submissions and getting those victories, but also Mayram got some. He submitted all 3 of his opponents to win the lightweight division. You got to love that. He's going to be returning for the light featherweight division at PANS. You had Jansen Gomez tearing through the middleweight division. He got 2 submissions over his opponents, scored 21 points in 3 matches. He's going to be in there at the heavyweight division. Gabby Pisania, she submitted 2 opponents. Ana Rodriguez defeated 2 opponents by submission. She outscored her opponent in the finals. Yeah, man. Jeez, too many names to count.
I want to point out one athlete that I think is going to be very slept on, not just here at AJP, despite his winning the light featherweight division, but also at PANS, where he enters the roosterweight division. Zayed Al-Kathiri. Now, maybe not the biggest known name in jiu-jitsu right now, but go back to November, watch the AJP World Pro, where he won the division and he beat some really established, really well-known names. I remember, for example, Nathaniel Fernandez was up there. I believe, I don't know if it was Jonas Andrade or some of those, long-established Cicero Costa roosterweights that deadly team of roosterweights down there. I don't remember exactly which ones, but I know there were several of them. I think he, at the London Open again, defeated Jonas Andrade in the final. So he's going to have to probably run into Talis and Suarez at some point, but don't sleep on Zayed Al-Kathiri. Keep an eye out for him. Despite the fact that he is maybe not as well-known a name as some of the others in the roosterweight division, he is going to do well.
Yeah, and while he may not be the most well-known name, he may have the coolest name, which is a big props to him, right?
Love it. A product of Abu Dhabi, right? He's a UAE representative, which makes him makes his story really cool, right? Because for a long time, Abu Dhabi has been hosting some of the best Brazilians, some of the best Americans, some of the best from here and from there, and have been developing the Abu Dhabi talent. But Zayed's arrival to winning the World Pro is a sign that, hey, Abu Dhabi Jiu-Jitsu is here.
Oh, yeah. And not just as an organization, but homegrown talent.
Right. We're running out of time. Let's talk about some of the events upcoming on FloGrappling this month and next, starting with this weekend in Australia, Subversion Equinox, which in the main event features Ash Williams versus Jeremy Skinner. Also, some of the other biggest names from Australia, from Europe, from the regions surrounding Australia and Europe. Going to be a really exciting event. I love this matchup between Ash Williams and Jeremy Skinner, two unsung heroes in the 145-pound division. Of course, later on this month, Daisy Fresh. Daisy Fresh Season 3, the final season, is set to return on March 29th. There will be a lot of supporting content with that event, with that episode, around every episode, right? Because Season 3 is a 10-episode long season, going to be running from March through just about the end of August. Lots of incredible stuff. I got a couple sneak peeks at the first 2 episodes of Season 3, and man,
where does it start?
Man,
do we get at that?
Ooh.
Like, are we doing who's number one championships? Like, what? All right, fair enough.
But yeah, no, it's incredible. I can't wait to share this with the world. Heath and the boys coming in later today. I think they'll be arriving just about now. We're doing some cool stuff with them. Maybe
troublemakers.
Maybe fix my game. Stay tuned for that. Want to run through the rest of the events coming up on FloGrappling, including, of course, the end of the month. PANS, March 21st through 26th.
Hard to read on the screen.
It's hard to read.
But Subversion Equinox on March 18th. We got IBJJF PANS. We talked quite a bit about that. That's going to be on March 21st through the 26th. Daisy Fresh Season 3 premiere, you already went over. We also got Rise Invitational on April 1st. We have Midwest Finishers 13 on April 1st. We got Finishers Survivor Series 3 on April 18th. And then Brasileiros, which is the third part of the Grand Slam season we're all going to be watching. That's happening on April 29th through May 7th. So, you're definitely going to be watching that if you're watching PANS coming up soon. On top of that, we got Emerald City, and we got a few other things coming here.
One more, I want to just jump back to Brasileiros because for me, that's a really exciting thing that we're able to finally host here on FloGrappling, right? For years, Brasileiros has been streamed on YouTube, but it is now coming to FloGrappling. You'll be able to search all of the athletes. You'll be able to watch all the black belt matches live on multiple cameras, multiple angles. Great footage with commentary in English and in Portuguese. It's going to get the star treatment it deserves. This is one of the 4 major gi tournaments of the year. It deserves to shine like PANS, like Euros, like Worlds. I'm excited that we can finally give this event the attention it deserves here on FloGrappling. One last thing I just want to end with this. At Euros, we talked about that back take that Tyne and Dalpra hit.
Okay.
Right, and we talked about how right after that I saw a video of him and that yellow belt Icaro talking about, okay, here's how to do it. Next time you compete, I want to see you try this. Well, check it out.
He hit it? Oh no. Oh no! Oh no! What a move!
Icaro Moreno, the youngest star from AOJ, the yellow belt sensation. Man, just can you imagine being 10 years old and getting this shit done to you?
Man, yeah, that's kind of demoralizing. But shout out to Tynan for just raising a killer. Apparently, that's so fun to see. It's good to see that it's applicable not only for someone who's on Tynan's level, best in the world on a European championship, but also for the kids. Gotta love to see that.
Do it for the kids. Anyway, that's it for this week's episode of the Grappling Bulletin podcast. Next week, our final thoughts before the Pan Championships, which starts on the 21st. So we will speak with you again on the 20th. Roll into Pans. Have a good week, guys. Catch you later.